loving God, we thank you for bringing us safely through another week, for the privilege of having the Sabbath that you gave to us, for our joy, our enjoyment, our fellowship, that we can come together and discuss you and your word, and to learn more about ourselves and you, that we might grow in our relationships. We pray that you would continue to dwell with each of us now, that you would guide our thoughts heavenward, comfort our hearts, and give us strength and grace. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. I'm going to do part 2 of Hunger Strike today. Just before we start, I know it's been a few weeks, I'll just recap briefly what we did last time. Just get rid of that. So this book, Hunger Strike, it's by a UK psychologist who has worked specifically with women, but specifically anorexic women. And the book is about that, but a lot of the book is about patriarchy. And we saw how anorexic women, the root of it is quite complex, that people become anorexic as possibly as some kind of protest against the social norms of patriarchy, and also resistance to sexuality and growing up into a woman, and also family pressure. So there may be relationship issues with the parents, but specifically with the mother. This is some of the things that the author brings out in the book. We also saw how girls are raised differently from boys. Often there's a pressure on girls as they grow up to be a caregiver and to deny themselves and their needs, and they're taught to defer to others for assurance and affirmation, I guess. So to check in with their parents, then to check in with a future spouse, husband, maybe partner, to help them do things, to see that they're doing it right. And so this, what the author says, is to bring out a shaky or insecure in themselves. They're unsure of their wants and needs. They're not able to express perhaps what they want, as is expected that they'll just become a wife and mother. And when they do that, they're there to meet other people's needs. And we also saw the difficult dynamic between a mother and daughter, that perhaps the mother has the same feelings of not being satisfied in the home as a mother, and that can affect the daughter, and that there might be this dynamic of control involved in parents and children and daughters. And this can lead to a problematic relationship with food. So I think some of those principles we saw parallel the Christian experience. So because Christianity is often patriarchal, well, it is patriarchal, the whole idea of service and giving up your own needs to serve other people is also perhaps a male and female problem that was brought out. And the message that often young girls get is diet, deprive and deny, so that you're there to provide others' needs, deny yourself. And this leads to a lot of tension around food. And I think someone else brought up the point about food being problematic for children, all children in Christian homes, Adventist homes, perhaps because of the health message that we're forced to eat vegetables or told things are good for them, and it's done in a way that's not helpful. So we saw there was some parallels perhaps between God and the health laws and humans, and then patriarchy and women, and and then if you're a woman in that and you come into Adventism and you've got all these health laws now, it's kind of like a double whammy. So you can see that something good, it's good to eat vegetables, can be approached in a negative way and can turn people off if it's made into strict rules and regulations. But that's what else? Women are valued by their body image, and men often by their occupation or what they do as a provider. And although there is more pressure on men now to look a certain way as well than ever before, I think, with social media. So both genders have pressure on being thin, looking beautiful, etc., being valued by their outward appearance. It was also brought up that diet question being a test, that there was some discussion around Ellen White, and Ellen White frames it that way, but it's never been a test. Food was there to enjoy, that this idea of the patriarchy, it's the patriarchal system and the test, the Christianity kind of viewpoint on these things, means that food is often attached to a lot of guilt and problematic and shame, and this tension between the anxiety, the guilt and tension over food and body image is something that people have to work through as they get older. So having said all that, if anyone's got any obviously questions or comments, please feel free to interrupt. Anything they wanted to add. So I'm just see the chat. So we ended up on this slide. For the compulsive eater, the experience of eating, while fraught with anxiety, contains elements of soothing, and the impulse towards food is generally coupled with a desire to give to oneself, to quiet an upset, to make whole what is empty, to say what cannot be spoken. So there's a compulsivity towards anorexia where they compulsively eat and then they make themselves sick. But there's also compulsive eating and binge eating with people who are overweight. So they may be underweight, they may be overweight. And this element of the reason why people do it is often attached to strong emotion. And I think that's something that we could probably all relate to on different things, so that addictions is another mechanism that people use to cope with unspoken about pain or upset or emotion that's buried. So in this instance, you know, they can't speak out what they really want and desire because of that pressure to hold everything together and not to be too emotional, even though women are allowed to be emotional. It's that paradox we spoke about last time, that there's something missing, there's an emptiness that people fill with food, other people will fill it with other addictions or other things. But food is particularly problematic because you can't give it up. I think that's one of the reasons it's so more challenging perhaps than, say, alcohol or cigarettes, because with alcohol and cigarettes you can actually stop doing it. Mama, you want to speak? I think somebody's unmuted. My iPad switch off. I can't. Mama, my iPad switch off.
Can someone who's got their can they mute their mic, please?
Oh, it's yes. Can you see the PowerPoint, Debbie?
Yes, clearly.
Yeah, I can't seem to share my screen with the PowerPoint. I can see it, but I can't see the chat. So just if someone's speaking, just let me know. Okay, so that's where we got to last time. Let's go to the next one. So how and why the body has become for women the vehicle for self-expression is the subject of the next chapter. I ask the reader to keep in mind from this chapter the overwhelming power of food in women's lives, the role of women as feeders of others and curtailers of food for themselves. For without this structural relationship to food, the ability of our culture to breed body insecurity in women would be seriously impaired. So she's bringing out the fact that the patriarchal society has this pressure on women to be caregivers. Is the cultural feminism, I suppose we could say, that whole need for the woman to be in the home, to feed others, to be the caregiver, to provide in the home. And on top of that, this idea that they must stop eating food themselves, curtailing it, denying and depriving and dieting. And that sort of mix with this overwhelming power of food in people's lives, because it's something we have to do on a social level 2 to 3 times a day or more. And it's something that's just has to be part of our lives. But that pressure to not have it, but also to have the desire to have it is in contradiction. And she says that structural relationship to food in our culture breeds this body insecurity with women, because on top of that, they're required to be skinny, especially in our dispensation. So in the past, perhaps hundreds of years ago, women were more covered. It was more beautiful to be rounded. You know, I think we mentioned that last time about the Renaissance and pictures that you see with more voluptuous women, but they've always been an object of beauty and desire, sexual desire, or portrayed in that manner often. And so that's been the pressure on women for centuries, but it just changes the body shape. But in our dispensation, you get models eating cotton wool because of that extreme thinness, that they're not allowed to have any fat anywhere. And on top of that, now with all the social media images of airbrushing and changing faces and Botox injections and so many ways to artificially alter the body shape. I was sent out a video recently by one of my counselling boss, who is going to use this video in schools to teach young people. And it shows a very normal, ordinary looking woman with a few blemishes on her face going into a makeup, I guess, a session to provide an advert for a company. And they smother her in makeup, they raise her eyebrows, they curl her hair, they do all those things outwardly, but then once the picture's done, they airbrush the picture, so they make her neck longer and thinner, they make her face narrower, and by the time she's finished, it doesn't look anything like the original, and this is plastered on billboards around the city. And you go, this is what people are being bombarded with all the time, and it's not realistic, and it's not normal, it's not natural. And that's the society we're living in. There's so much more of that available, those images that bombard people. And so she says, let's trace that, how that's happened, the breeding of body insecurity. So the chapter starts with describing how women feel about their bodies and how that affects their mood on an hourly, daily basis. So women can be, you catch them sighted themselves in a mirror or a shop window or somewhere, and they're very conscious about how they look. And she says this can trouble people not just daily once they've got up in the morning and done their face, but hourly through the day, they can be triggered into thinking about how they look, and that look affects how they feel. So they can feel very happy one minute and very sad the next, based purely on what they look like. And she's discussed that with a lot of people. And then she talks about throughout Western history, from art and mythology of ancient civilization to current representational forms, women's bodies have been regarded as objects of beauty, as well as symbols of what constitutes beauty. A beautiful woman confers additional status on a man by implying his command over it. With or through her body, a woman makes her way in the world, in much the same way as a man's sense of well-being rests on his knowledge of himself as a provider, at whatever level that may be. So a woman's identity is deeply entwined with a sense of herself as an attractive person and with a body with which she negotiates the world. So I don't know if anybody on here feels that they've got that experience, or whether the men in the group feel that they're the same way or not. I don't know. Do you? Anybody willing to share how they feel about it?
I think that's a bit of a delicate situation. You got to be brave to speak out, I think.
Do you? Why? Because you, do
Well,
you feel that pressure? I mean, Debbie, do you feel that pressure as a woman to be beautiful?
well, yeah, especially, well, I'm not so bothered about that so much, but I think it's because when you get older, it does bother you. Yeah, it does. I'll be honest.
So age bothers the fact that you're losing
Yeah,
your
I think
beauty.
so. I think so. And I think it does bother us. I mean, I'm going to speak for myself, not for everybody else. I can say that, it's probably well hidden within us, probably. And because I wasn't brought up in a church. I didn't always go to church until later in my life. So, and I suppose in a way we unconsciously follow what the world's dictating to us. We don't even know the world's dictating to us, and we just do what the world does. And we go out and wear makeup. I wore makeup and all that stuff. I didn't wear false eyelashes and all that business, but I did put it on. But I never thought two things about it. It was just because everybody did it. It was like putting your clothes on. You put your clothes on, you put your face on, and you unconsciously do these things. You don't even know you're doing them sometimes. And sometimes you don't even know you're pulled into this way of how you look. Because I think it's how, I think with me, I think you do feel conscious when people look at you, if they're looking at what you're wearing, and which is what I know that they do when once you go into a city. Look at what you're wearing, look at what your hair's like, and it does make you feel conscious. Oh gosh, I better, there's times when I've come here and I'll just be casually wearing stuff here, and I think, oh gosh, I couldn't wear those shoes in the city. And I don't know why I said what I said, but I remember thinking it. I can't wear this going to the city. I can't wear that jacket going in the city. You know what I mean? And I think underlining it, I think we are conscious about how we're treated and looked by others. When it shouldn't really bother us, but I think deep down it does.
Definitely. Yeah. And as you say, when you get older, is it because, I don't know if you've consciously processed this, that you lose value as you get older? So you want to stay looking young? There's something about
I don't
not being
know. Yeah,
active.
I think it is. I think there is. Like I was saying to you before, I was saying that when I was in my 50s, I felt great. I was okay. It didn't bother me being 50s. But when I hit 60, that's when it really bothered me.
Yeah.
I thought, oh my gosh, and it did. And I think it took me out of, I didn't sort of, I was a bit shocked at how I thought and how I was thinking, how it did affect me. I think that took me a ways and how that, And I don't know why. I think it did. So it'll come to. I mean, obviously, some of us are going to be. Are not always going to hit that older age because Christ will come by then.
Yeah,
But when you get,
we
but
hope.
I was going to say, like myself, when you do get old, I think it does. And I don't know why it bothered me. I just know that it did. I can't
Yeah,
explain why it did.
Well, I
right.
think for me, Debbie, to carry on with that, getting older means being not so, because as you get older, you lose your muscle.
Yeah,
And I don't like that. I don't like fat anyway on my body. I like being a little bit weightier, but I don't like flab. So I would exercise or not all the time. But for me consciously, I would want to be healthy and strong and not like an old woman where you have all that flab or your skin starts to sag, because it doesn't have to do that. You don't have to be like that. 70 plus is like new. I mean, it's like young these days. It's not old like when my grandma was 70, she looked 70, or somebody was 80, they looked 80 in those days. But now you don't have to be like that. You can have that strength that God gives you, and you can improve yourself in a lot of ways. And I think it's just healthy to have a healthy attitude.
yeah. There needs to be positivity around it, but often there isn't in society. There's a very negative view of getting old, and you're not allowed to see people getting old, really. Social media and films and Hollywood, and even the news. It's like they have to look young still.
Mm,
God.
mm.
If I may
Yeah, Curtis,
just,
sorry, Curtis had his hand up. If,
oh,
did you
okay.
still want to speak, Curtis? Sorry, Brian. I was going to say that after before CG, but she can't hear me.
Sorry, yeah, I didn't see that.
That's all right. It's gone down. I don't know.
That's
Did you
okay.
still?
Well, all I was gonna say is, again, it's different from the experiences that have been shared. But when you asked that question, I just thought back at myself and my relationship with my body, with my looks, and etc. And I think it's gone through different phases in my life, I suppose, depending on the environment that I've been in. So, for instance, in high school, um, I don't think I had a very positive relationship with my body because um, the cultural context in the way I wasn't really healthy, and so I wasn't. I would always question, why is my skin so dark? Why is my nose so big? Why do I look this way? Why is my hair like this? Because of the environment that I was in. And then there'd be some times where I feel confident about the way I look. And it just goes up and down. And I guess as I've got older, um, there's less. I don't think so much about myself in the same way, but it's shifted about wanting to appear attractive all the time. I think there's a part of that that's like, I am a single guy. I want to look good. And so this is what the world tells me a guy looks good by being. So I want to look like that. And so I'll think that at some times and then look in the mirror and be like, ugh, I don't fit this. But then most of the time I look in the mirror, I'm like, hey, I'm good looking. And so it just goes up and down.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it's not in the context of just constantly feeling like under pressure to conform. But for me at least, it goes up and down depending on what side of the bed I wake up.
Yeah. How much sleep you've had.
Yeah.
But I hear that. I think there's going to be an up and down nature to it with everyone. But I think that and over life changes as well. So like you said, as you've got older, but you're still a single. And I was thinking that because when you're single, there still seems to be more pressure to look good, to attract a mate. That whole thing about physical looks being the first impression, and being wanting to make a good first impression to try and win a mate. And you think that once you're married, that would get easier. And I think it probably does get easier, but at the same time, there's so much social pressure, especially on women, I think more so than men. And I think that's what she's trying to bring out, so that when, so I remember I've homeschooled for 11 years from Asher when he was little, and being on a mountain in the country by myself with them, not going out that much, not having a worldly job. And I remember somebody saying to me, it's easy for you, you're out stuck on your mountain, you don't mix with anyone. And like the pressures of having to dye your hair or wear nice clothes or have high heels or whatever it is. And when I went to work again, you know, in the last 4 years, I recognized that it's a lot harder to just stand and stand your ground when everybody around you is judging each other by the way they look. So they're plucking eyebrows, they're even tattooing eyebrows, they're talking about weight loss, they're dyeing their hair, everybody dyeing their hair, to the point where somebody came up to me once and said, it's really refreshing to see someone with grey hair. Oh, thanks. I don't know if they take that as a compliment or not. But I also remember working, I was sent to different places to work, and I was in a behavioural unit, and one of these children was very outspoken, quite rebellious, etc., but not afraid to say what she thought. And she just came, she said, your eyebrows look like slugs. And I remember, and I was thinking, I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. But then the teacher who was working with her said, yeah, I think her eyebrows look like slugs as well. And I was so taken aback by this teacher endorsing this girl's view of body image. I don't even remember what she said next. I was just sitting there thinking, how rude is that? But she carried on sort of saying, I don't know if she even said to her, you don't just go up to people and say, I don't think she even told her off for saying things like that. And I'm thinking, we're trying to educate these children to be happy with who they are, as well as to be able to interact in that sphere, in a social setting properly. And you're like, how are we going to do that if we're all bound by the system as well, which this one was? But that pressure is still there to conform to that standard as a woman. And the shaving the legs, the whole lot, when you think and look at people, and there's so much pressure on you to just do what everyone else is doing, whatever that is. So I can certainly relate to when you're saying, you look in the mirror and you think, it's okay today and it's not tomorrow. So I don't know if other women in the workplace, or if you're married, do we still feel like this, or is it just more pressure on people being single? I feel there is more pressure on single, perhaps. Anyone else want to say anything?
Yes, I just want to say how I do admire your courage with your grey hair.
Stop.
And
it's laziness. No,
sorry,
it's laziness. I can't be bothered to dye it. Go on.
Yeah, so it does bring home to me, like, why don't you just leave your hair and let it go grey? And I'm going, oh, and my children will always say, because they in their 30s, and they go, and they the ones that kind of like push you, mommy, wear this or do this to your face, or and I thought, in a way, like, they keep you young too, and because it's just a chore every time to dye your hair. And I think one day I'll get to that point where I'll be as brave as you are, or just think, okay, don't let me conform to this world. Just let me leave my hair,
Yeah, but that's an important point as well. Like you said, your children. So if you're in an environment, I think that's kind of what Curtis was saying, depends on the environment. So if you're in a school environment where everybody does this, there's more pressure. When you're out of that environment, it's not so difficult. So when you're with children a lot who are saying, oh, mum, you look awful, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to better yourself, you need to look young. If people you keep getting those voices, it's a lot harder to resist. And I think it's putting ourselves in a place where we don't get all that all the time, or we just stop that, or we have to learn to say, no, this is who I am, just leave it alone, and hopefully it will drop, exactly. Because it's not helpful, but we're all part of the system. I think that's what she's trying to, in the book. So even though it's about anorexia, she's pulling out some really crucial things that everybody goes through, and this is just an extreme version of what women are suffering, and it's become pandemic, and it's because of the whole the pressure, I think, to conform to these certain standards. And if you're not acceptable, you're not beautiful, you're not valued. And I don't know how it's going to change, except the next wave of fashion, or enough people stand up and say, we're not doing this anymore. And we don't have time to change anything.
There's a few Hollywood people that they've refused to dye their hair now too. So I think when that kind of sect stands their ground, a lot of other people will be confident to do that too.
Yeah, they're leading the world in what people see and what they look like, but it needs enough of them to do that, I suppose. And also there's other, if you can still look beautiful with grey hair, you know, it's like that's all the other bits. But I know Andres has got his hand up. Brian, did you want to comment?
Yeah, there's a line there that says women's bodies have been regarded as objects of beauty. Okay. Yeah, that sounds a bit not nice when you use the word objects of beauty. But what is wrong with a woman or a man admiring a woman's body or a woman admiring her own body? You know, even in nature, the birds, and I can't think of any other species in nature, but bodies count for something, you know.
But in nature,
they are beautiful.
The man's bodies count for something. You look at a peacock, and the female peacock is nothing, and it's
exactly.
So that's kind of redressing the balance. I think for me, there's nothing wrong with admiring beauty anywhere. The problem is when it's emphasized on one side and not the other. So with the law of equality, you know, equal under the law, everybody should have the same standard, the same approach, in the sense that, okay, let's admire men's bodies as much as we do women's. Let's treat them the same. And we don't do that because a woman is an object and she's been portrayed that way. A man has never been portrayed that way. So men are portrayed as having to be strong and go out to battle and different things that are perhaps as toxic, but it's different. It's not about how they look primarily. They've got wealth, or they've got something that makes them valuable perhaps, or attractive, but it's not their body per se. Whereas the woman, it's about her body, and that seems unfair on many levels because you're born with it. You don't choose it. You can't alter it and change it. You can now a lot more than you ever could, but you can't do much about it. It's what you're given, whereas you can change your job. You can go out and achieve more. You can get more money. You can make choices with other areas to gain esteem or value in society. I'm not saying all that's right as well, but with the body, the pressure is so huge to change it, to alter it in some way to fit in, and it's really hard to do, and it takes a huge amount of sacrifice. And maybe you can't even do it. You can't change your body shape, your bone structure, whatever. So it's hugely damaging, and it's a product of patriarchy that we belong to the man. This whole idea of being the object, of owning an object, the way men talk about protecting their woman, you know, it's that ownership thing which just lowers the value of a woman as an equal partner.
But in the same breath, men's bodies, they can't change what they have. Men are born to have muscles where they have muscles. Women have other assets where they have them. So, you know, it's I find it a bit difficult to say that it's unfair that women are viewed as objects of beauty, whereas men don't get the same treatment. It's because, as you've said, men and women are different. Their bodies are different, so they got to be viewed differently.
On one level, yes, but there's also that we've made women beautiful. We've put that on a pedestal more than we have men. And so, yes, both sexes can have long hair, for instance, because you can say women have beautiful hair. Men have very beautiful hair when they grow it long. It's similar, but it's never seen in the same way. It's never dealt with in the same way by society. And so that it changes the whole, it makes women, as I say, objects as opposed to people. It values them through those looks, and they're judged primarily through that, whereas the man isn't. Even though he's got the muscles and things, he's valued for more than that. He's valued for his intellect, for his power to earn money, for other talents and gifts, which are not the same. It's just the whole thing being put on the looks. That's what women's value has always been for a long time. So they're there to raise children and to look beautiful all the time. And that pressure is a very different pressure than the men get, even though you can appreciate they've both got different bodies. I think we're all schooled to see women as objects of beauty, even women are. So we're looking at other women going, oh, she's nice to look at. And we don't look at men even in that way. even though we might find them sexually attractive. I know that's a different discussion for a prayer meeting, but we just don't view them in the same way, which is negative, I feel.
Emma,
Yes.
just so the author uses their words very deliberately, and as Brian said, that it has an ugly connotation to it, and I think that that's deliberate from the author to say objects of beauty, because from what I understand, at least, when people talk about the objectification of beauty, it's pointing out that sure, women are beautiful and women find men beautiful and etc. But it's the objectification part that becomes the issue. Just emphasizing what you've said, where if a person's a person, they're beautiful, but they're also a person with all these characteristic traits that they can provide to society. So their intellect. But as soon as you make the beauty or you objectify a woman, you take away the inner being, and the woman just becomes this thing to look at, and not a person you can interact with that can contribute to life in all the different phases. And I guess that's kind of alluding to what you were saying. Whereas I don't think anyone denies that when women look at men, they see a beautiful man, or a homosexual man looks at a man, whatever the case may be. But there's an acknowledgement that men provide to society through their minds, through what they do, and etc. And so their beauty, men's beauty, isn't emphasized as much. And that's not because men aren't beautiful. It's just that it's not given the same emphasis as women's beauty. So I think, yeah, just pointing out that the words objects of beauty is really deliberate by the author.
Yes. And so in that way, you're not going to look at a man and judge him straight off on his looks and throw him out. Whereas women, their sort of default position is look at them and go, oh, they don't look very nice. Or why did they do their hair like that? Or why did they dress like that? Or why did they do this? Or, and that's that immediate judgment, which I think comes in to women and the expectations of women. So when you see, public figures spoken about in the media, like Angela Merkel, or any woman who's in a public office, it's immediate about her clothes. Why is she wearing that? And why she, that whole, even with Margaret Thatcher as well, what's she wearing? And what's her hair like? And it's that immediate, which you never do with a man, unless they look extremely out of place, and then you might be distracted by it, but they're never judged by their clothes straight off. So as you say, it's that disconnect, I think, the woman feels, which she's going to go into between the body and the person. So this body is your shell that you live in, but it's separate from who you are, and it's made into, like you say, an object, which is negative. It's been hugely damaging for women to fight for equality. I think it's been a real battle.
Elder Emma.
Andres,
Oh,
you got your hand up?
Andres, you got your hand up?
Yes, thanks.
Could I just ask Andreas if I can just add something to what Curtis said, in case he's moving away from that point?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to add that there's also an economic element to beauty. So the whole economic model is built on a template for the female body and female insecurity. That, so people have worked out that it makes money to control how the female body looks. And there's some of that with men, but it's largely biased towards the females. So the whole objects of beauty thing it's financially driven. It's an economic thing. And because of that, people will have unhealthy relationships to women's bodies.
Yeah, that's true. It's a huge economic industry based on what you have to buy and do to your body to make it acceptable.
Andres?
Yeah. I was gonna bring a second perspective. Not sure like if it's or not. I think like from my perspective, for example, I've always been really self-conscious of my body. Like it's been a huge thing ever since I remember, like since I was a little kid, and I was like, I really don't like my ears, I don't like my teeth, and I was like really obsessed with that. But I don't know, like in my experience, I guess like it's at least my perception was that other boys weren't as worried with that as I was, or at least not with the intensity that I was. So I don't know if that's true or not, really. It felt or it feels that way sometimes. And I don't know why, but um, I guess so. Maybe it's like the primary and most important issue that's being addressed is um, the different treatment that men and women get, and so like that's why I said I mean it's not a good thing to bring up, but um, because I think that's the main problem. But I was thinking about it like a secondary problem, perhaps if we can say it that way. That is, at least to me, that it feels like even though we have like a lot to solve, and like by solving that primary problem, like we can get so much better and healthier, etc. There's still like the aspect, I guess, of that I guess we were created to enjoy beauty and to enjoy ourselves beautiful, and like, including the physical appearance. And it's also, yeah, like, so I guess the way I see it, we were created to, we were not created to be fallen humans in the way that we ended up being. Um, so I don't know if it's helpful to keep that in mind. I guess as you were saying, Emma, like the balance um, that um, I guess you brought up the word balance. I don't know if you meant it that way, but there's like an underlying need, I guess, that's around all of this. Um, I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
And I think thanks for sharing your experience, because I think men do go through this, especially now, that insecurity in the body. And you brought out the point, you thought you might be more insecure than boys. Maybe they just didn't talk about it, or maybe you were more, because we're all different levels of anxiety over things, our background, lots of things contribute to how we're going to feel about ourselves and our bodies. But you just made the point about, yeah, we're designed to be beautiful in that sense, like created to be beautiful. But I think what's happened is like lots of things, it's been perverted in the sense that beauty, we know, at least from a Christian level, Bible and Ellen White, is inward beauty, it's character, it's how nice you are, it's how kind you are, and that shines through and affects how beautiful you are as a person. It's not just the physical form. And the way that society has dealt with that physical form has to elevate it above all else. So it's everybody knows that you should be attracted to the whole person eventually, but there's such a huge emphasis on the outward form, but also who defines what attractive is in the outward form. Like everybody loves women who are more shapely, or everybody wants a one with fat lips, with the Botox now. So that there's a sort of fashion in, you will go down this route and everybody thinks that's beautiful now.
Yeah, of course.
It isn't true, but it's all engineered, manufactured to make you go that way. So, and I think that's the thing that's wrong, because if you were in heaven and everybody was, or in an environment that wasn't this, in an equality kingdom where it's people's characters are valued for who they are and what they are, and they're treated for that, the whole person, not for what they look, nobody would be that concerned about outward. If your nose is a bit funny or your ears are a bit funny, I don't think. And of course you could ask, well, maybe we're deformed by sin too, so we all had perfect noses and perfect ears before, so we wouldn't have had to worry about that. So we don't know how much of our physical deformities are or things that we're insecure about are actually product of sin as well. So I guess that's part of it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree that that's the primary or biggest problem that we face.
Yeah.
Okay, Primrose.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to be a bit radical in this.
Oh.
Yeah, that allow me to be. I think going to extremes is always dangerous, is always bad. But I don't think there's anything wrong looking good, taking care of yourself, enhancing. I think if if it makes you happy, it's good. Because I want to challenge Ellen White when she says inward beauty, and we've always made that a standard, of Christianity. The inward person, and then we neglect the outward person. So I think there needs to be a balance between how much how much you're going to concentrate on just the inward beauty, and yet you are also living in a world, where you're surrounded with people. We don't live in cocoons, so it will sometimes you end up acting like you're in a cult just because you want to maintain Ellen White standards and all of beauty, but I don't think sometimes they're applicable. No, and sometimes it's actually more damaging when you say I'll swim against the tide, because for example, I'll give you a discussion I was having with someone. So the child is going to high school, right? And they just want a nice backpack, just and they say, okay, this backpack from Primark is 14 pounds. This backpack from Sports Direct is 14 pounds. The one from Primark is not branded. The one from Sports Direct is branded. Can I please have the one from Sports Direct? And then as a parent, you say, no, you just want brands and you just want to follow what's going on. And then when that child goes to school, that child just goes through emotional abuse from other students. For what reason? The price was the same.
Usually the price isn't the same, Rose. Usually the price isn't the same, but go on.
Yeah, but in this case, it was.
I get it.
It was the same, So why are you allowing your child to go through all that emotional abuse? Just because as a Christian, we shouldn't follow brands or what? I want to challenge and say, sometimes we also need to exercise caution, because going too much to the extreme is what's actually damaging, Any extremes are not good. Any extremes are not good. And I don't think there's anything wrong. Like Sidra said, she doesn't want fat on her body. She doesn't want it. So what's wrong with, working out and remove it? Someone will say, oh, I want to look fuller. And there are all these terms. You don't have to be skinny to be fit or what. Some people actually call it thick fit. You're round and all, but you're still fit. So I just want to say, and I know it sounds radical what I'm saying, but I want to say that if it makes you feel good, because sometimes the world is just so judgmental. No one makes you feel good. But sometimes you need to look at yourself inside, and if it makes you feel good, go for it. Sometimes it's awkward. I'll tell you, for example, the days we used to wear very long attires, and then I go to a family function with my natural hair, not plaited, and it's difficult to deal with. And I'm there amongst family members, and the Rose they knew before me joining this movement was a totally different one. And then there's this one that is now dressed in all longs, no makeup, no what. When I was with my, I'll say sisters at church, because those days used to call each other sisters or brothers. Although I was all right because I was in the same circle. But when you go out of that circle, the emotional damage it does to you, even if no one says anything, that emotional damage, how you look down on yourself, how I think it does more damage than just trying to stand out, against the tide. But now, if I'm going to a family function, I can wear my tracksuit, I can wear my slacks, even if I don't have makeup, but my hair is done. And it's not a crime to have it done. And you just you interact better with people. You're not embarrassed, you're not in this cocoon, you're not thinking, oh, what is everyone saying about my dress? These days I don't even care what people say about my dress, because I'm not someone that is raising eyebrows as I pass by. So I just wanted to say that, the emotional damage of, Ellen White's standard of inward beauty, and then neglecting also the outer beauty as well, is a bit dangerous. And in as much as I'm saying the outside should also be taken care of, I'm also saying just going to extremes is always dangerous,
Absolutely. I don't think
Yeah.
what you're saying is radical. I think it's balanced, isn't it? So I hear you with the Ellen White, and I think we've been saying that there's layers of this. So there's patriarchy in the world, and then on top of that, there's now conservative Christianity, which has damaged us further in many ways with the dress code, with the health message, not doing health, but the way we've approached it. So I think that's a big factor. And even with Ellen White, to be fair with the dress question, she does say we shouldn't dress so out of step with our time that we're a stumbling block to people. I'm paraphrasing badly, but so she does have that caution. So in some ways she was quite balanced with that. But I also see there's a kind of running sexism through it as well. So there's obviously, because she's a product of a sexist patriarchal society as well. But I think that's reasonable counsel. And when we used to dress, I guess, in trainers and long skirts, it was a bit out of step, even though everybody can still wear skirts in society. We still looked perhaps a bit odd. But the fact is, we thought we did it because God wanted us to. And I think that's a separate issue from doing it because of, so I guess you're saying that's extreme now. And I suppose looking back at it, we were extreme in a sense that we have to wear this all the time. But I think that the reason behind it's slightly different from not doing these other things. But yes, there should be freedom now to say, nobody's saying don't be smart, don't do the best for your body, don't be as fit as you can. So don't, like you mentioned, Cedric saying about the fat. Yeah, I mean, there's healthy, which is the concept of health is an important one, but that's different from, I guess, this point that it's about the objectification of women, which is the negative side of it. And the pressure that you're under when you go to these things is all part of the expectation that you should look a certain way. Because why are they bothered what we're wearing? Why is anyone bothered what someone else is wearing on one level if they look okay in it? It's not like it's extremely immodest. It's extreme in itself to wear a long skirt. It's not really that extreme. It wasn't that extreme, but there's such a pressure to, perhaps because you changed as well, so they're wondering why you've changed and all that. But I don't remember feeling that uncomfortable in skirts and thinking this is what God wants, so I'm happy to do it. There's that kind of element of it. But I hear what you're saying, that we need to still look after the outward, and it's not just about inward beauty. But a sexist thing that comes to mind with Ellen White is where she says a woman shouldn't, when her husband comes home from work, a woman shouldn't look dressed like something to scare the crows. And being she's in her work clothes, she should get dressed up for her husband when he comes home. And I'm thinking, does she ever say that about a man? Does she ever say he should be wearing his work clothes for his wife? It's just like that whole imbalance of that. And surely she couldn't have looked that bad back in the 1800s. I mean, she was going to be wearing some kind of dress that wasn't very smart, presumably, because they didn't have any tracksuit bottoms or stuff we look scarecrowish in now, maybe. But those things hit you hard, like you've got to look good for your husband, and that pressure is. And I'm not saying at all we shouldn't look good for each other, but just the imbalance of Ellen White saying that about the woman, but I don't see it anywhere where it's said about that.
Curtis, you got your hand up?
I'll keep this short so you can carry on, Emma, because
Yeah.
well, I was just going to bring up that thing about Ellen White saying, so despite all her counsel and about focusing on inward beauty, she still does bring up that thing about you need to look good. So forgetting about the sexist nature a bit, like just put that aside. I'm gonna defend her. I'm gonna be the jury for her and say I think she did acknowledge, that outward beauty and adornment still plays a part in our um like in relationships. Um for me at least, she was fighting against the what this woman is writing is fighting against. Um the excessive focus we put on one side of our being as
Yeah.
opposed to the other. So if we read it in that context, the sexist part aside, I think she was pretty balanced in that she's not disregarding outward adornment and etc. She just needed to focus on a very specific point that was affecting society. Um, and then I like what Rose said, because it resonates with a lot of what we're teaching with regards to, your pursuit of happiness as a person in this life. That people should be given the liberty to be happy, to find happiness in etc. The counter, which authors like this will point out and psychologists will point out, is that a lot of things that we do that we think make us happy don't in the long term. So me going to eat a bucket of KFC chicken, it will make me really happy right now. But in the long term, it may not. And so there's a lot of things around the beauty industry that, sure, it will make people feel happy, like day to day, but as you start, uh, I think, just speaking from what I've read, not my experience, but from what many women say, that okay, they feel happy going out with their makeup on and etc. But over time, with the economic sacrifices that are made to keep up with that beauty, with the constantly needing to reinvent themselves, it takes a toll on their mental health as well. So there's a trade-off for the instant gratification versus delayed effects that has on you as a person. Um, but that's not to disregard, the idea that we should do what makes us happy. I think we just need to think about what truly makes us happy.
Yes, thank you. And I think coupled with that is that I feel kind of bound to critically analyze why it makes me happy as well, so that the pressure to do certain things is there because society has raised you that way, has molded you that way, that you can't be happy without going out with your makeup on, for instance, as an example, because everybody says that you look better and that the society says everyone looks better with makeup. And so you have to do that. You're forced to conform if you want to look your best and your smartest, to go along with that standard. And that's what you've been raised to believe makes you happy. So I think now we're critically looking at everything going, actually, is this patriarchy? Where is this from? And in an ideal world, we wouldn't do X, Y, Z. But because we're not in an ideal world, I hear Rose when she says we need to, there's some level of discomfort in going against what everyone else is doing, which you don't have to necessarily. So like with the bag example, and I think there's a level of compromise which we have to meet in our daily lives to fit in on one level with the society we're in. So obviously that's something we're all questioning, and it's not easy to come to some definitive position on that, or some coherent or collective answer to that when everyone's got different backgrounds, they're mixing with different people in different settings. It's not easy either to move from the right to the left. And I was talking about someone the other day about this, how difficult it is for us as a movement, and not to underestimate the difficulty of that, of being on the right with all these conservative ideas and the way we've read Ellen White, to moving to the left now is not easy. But yes, I agree with it. I think Ellen White was very balanced, and many of the things she said about dress, totally sensible. It was about health, it was about clothing limbs to prevent sickness. It was about not wasting time sewing ribbons and sequins on your dresses when you could just wear the dress as it is. It was very practical and very sensible. And that's a huge part of the counsel. It's modesty, simplicity, healthful, etc. Not to be a stumbling block to others, but also for your own benefit. So I think it's not to throw it all out by any means. No. Does somebody else have their hand up? Was that Blessing?
Yes, I did have a hand up. I just wanted to add that I personally feel like it's unfair on people to carry the burden of firstly wanting to be happy and pursue what makes them happy, and also having to sort through what genuinely makes people happy and what doesn't. So generally what I'm trying to say is I think there's a responsibility of society, institutions that exist to create a safe environment for everyone. I think you mentioned it in the phrase equality under the law. If you have an environment, a system, a set of institutions that promote equality under the law, equal treatment for everyone, I think that foundation makes it practical and easier for people to pursue happiness. Because currently we're having to pursue happiness in an unequal system. And because of that, it's difficult, to be honest. It's really difficult to tell someone, to tell your sister or a friend or whatever, that, beauty standards can give you a high now, but they won't make you happy in the long run. Because it's not really my sister's fault or my friend's fault. She's been raised in an environment that makes it so difficult to think differently to that. And she will pursue happiness within the context of what she knows. So what I'm basically saying is I think there is a large responsibility on the institutions to actually correct that imbalance. It can't be a responsibility that's fully placed on an individual to find what makes them genuinely happy in the long run, because I don't think any person can do that without help.
Yeah, and I thought as well you were going to question the actual pursuit of happiness, which I think is another program we could do about actually what is that actually good even to pursue happiness, because it's constantly out of reach. And I think we're in a society which says that you must be happy all the time, you must be self-confident and positive, and it's a kind of a sin to be negative and you can never feel bad, but it's not realistic to say, to someone in pain, just be happy. It's not sensible. So there was an article, I know Curtis had posted the 2 articles about happiness, one about the road to happiness and one about, men and women being friends. But there was another one that I saw, I think yesterday, about the psychological life. And because it was addressing what does it mean to have a good life. Some people will say it means pursue happiness. Other people will say a good life. Now, what they're studying now is a psychologically fulfilled life. And what they are addressing in that is the fact that it will have highs and lows, and the people that go through those highs and lows have challenges and change from them and learn from them, and that to change your whole way you look at life is actually more fulfilling than to pursue happiness. And I thought that's what the movement's done. So it's quite an interesting approach to it, saying that's what a good life is. It's not about pursuing happiness, because that's very elusive and not actually that helpful. So anyway, it's perhaps another discussion.
Okay, then there's Natalie and then Primrose.
Hello, everyone. I really like what Blessing said, even though I forgot most of it now. I'll have to go back and listen. But I wanted to say, if Blessing wouldn't mind, but if he does, that's okay. Maybe yourself, Emma, could comment. How would the institution fix that? I'm talking about the movement. How would it be safe institution and equally fair with regards to what you've just been talking about with Blessing? Can Blessing answer if he wants to? If not, Emma.
Can I pass, Natalie? Sorry.
Thought you would. But what do you think the movement can do? Because your book is talking about, and obviously you see the unfairness to women in the book, and also how it affects everyone in the movement, men and women, but mostly women. I would say. We're all victims, but women are more victims, I think, because we're sexualized in a higher sense than men are. Not saying men aren't. So how would we implement, let's say, a reforms or the vows or something in the movement to reflect that, but also be equal and a place of safety and happiness for both, or for all genders?
I think this is something we're discussing currently, especially in light of the reform vows. It's quite a challenge when you think about it. I think that the principles are ones we need to see. First of all, on an individual level, we need to understand ourselves better, understand why we do what we do in this context in which we're doing it. But as Blessing said, that's a huge responsibility to put on someone to try and find out what makes them happy and what doesn't. And the whole telling somebody, don't do this for now because long term this is not going to be very helpful for you, because right now you're in this context and this makes me happy, so I'm doing this. And I think that because we're in a broken world, it's very difficult to implement the principles of equality as an equality kingdom in a broken world. We're seeking to do that, and I think it starts with an acceptance amongst ourselves of each other, and like at a camp meeting or when we do get together, of being able to feel that we can be who we are and we're accepted. And I think that's a huge relief for a lot of people to say, it doesn't matter, we're removing the judgment negativity out of it, the negative judgment. I don't think you can remove judgment altogether. Maybe you're not even supposed to, because there's certain levels of boundaries and standards that we all operate under. But I think it starts with us accepting ourselves and accepting each other in the movement. But I don't know if we're going to be able to implement on a mass scale any kind of, we're not going to be able to impact society. And the movement can't exist outside society. So we can come together for camp meeting, but then we all go back home to our various lives and our interaction with the world on a regular basis. And it's not easy to prescribe that in any way, I don't think. It's for each person.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, and that's why it hasn't been really done effectively, I would say, thus far within the movement, since we've had the message of equality and also sexism and stuff. But what about Hebrews 8, when we look at the video Elder Paminda mentioned yesterday, part 4, when he's putting it about Hebrews 8 with regards to food, but you could also put it towards reforms or whatever.
Clothes were mentioned here.
Yeah, so I just thought I'd put that into the mix. But
what do you see that as saying then? Saying that basically everyone should be mature enough to make decisions?
Yeah. I think that you should, if you go back and watch that video, because as Elder Paminda said, it's very important, and you can put it across different things. It would maybe give you your own insight to yourself and how you should behave, and how, I'm not saying throw happiness away, but just what does it say for you, and then go on that. And then it's your relationship between you and God with Hebrews, whether it's about diet or whether it's about reform, or how you dress as a woman or a man. So yeah, I thought I'd mention that. But what was the other thing? I forgot now. Thank you.
That's all right. I think that's valid. I think as well, it's now the tension between the individual doing that and the movement as a collective doing that. So I think that's where we're at with, okay, so we're growing up, we're maturing as individuals and as a movement, and how does the movement now function in that setting? So we don't really have a proper, I guess, blueprint in the world, because we know that the Constitution of America was meant to be, I guess, a guide to how societies are meant to function. The pursuit to life, liberty, and the rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But we know the Constitution was meant to grow and change with society, and it hasn't really done that. So we're kind of trying to do that as we go.
Yeah, I was going to say on that point. I was just going to say that is the institution and how it's been operated and worked, managed, a reflection of how the members are behaving, or is it the other way around?
Good question.
Primrose?
So sorry, could Nelly just repeat her question? Sorry, I think I missed it.
I was just going to say off the bat what you said, Emma, about is the institution, how it's managed, organized, presented, a reflection of the pressure. I'll use pressure, that's a little bit controversial, the pressure of the members and their freedom to do what they want. Which one affects the other first? Is it the members affect the institution, or is it how the institutions run affects the members? I've said
Okay.
it a bit differently. Yeah.
And I
Okay,
think,
Primrose. Oh, sorry. Do you want to answer that, Emma, before Primrose talks?
just to comment on that, I think this is one of the tensions that we're facing, isn't it? Isn't this the heart of the issue in the sense of democracy, or the definition of democracy, or the whole tension between a monarchy or a dictator and the people, and who has the power, and how does that power work? So,
Yeah, but Al Khamenei said democracy is dangerous when we talked about organisation and how do we want hierarchy. If you look at democracy really in a deeper level, it's dangerous. It can be dangerous. That's controversial.
This is what the founders of America were afraid of. We don't want all these people deciding things for us, because that's dangerous. These people without property, or these people who are the wrong skin color, or whatever the people were. It's that fear of other people making decisions for me, and that's at the heart. Well, one of the hearts of the question, I suppose, is how do we move forward together in agreement where everybody's voice is heard, or but maybe they're not right. So how do you do that? And then if you get telling people, it's the tension. Go on.
Okay, there's Primrose, there's Brian, and then there's Andres. So Primrose, do you want to go first?
Yes. So I wanted to say that if you look at this subject, Emma, even from history, it always then comes back to the woman. So even if you look at Ellen White's writings on dress, most of what she writes on dress is just targeting on women. And I feel that's unfair, honestly. Men are just told, have a Sabbath suit. Women are told, and have your boots blackened. Women are told the do's and don'ts of dress. And even when I joined the church Adventism, I knew that the afternoon program, if it was about dress reform, it was a platform for men and other sanctified women to bombard other women, to bombard other women on their appearance. I don't know if people agree with me. Every afternoon, whenever dress reform is introduced or whatever, any reforms, the subject then ends up just the focus is on women. So there's no peace for women. If you go outside into the world also has standards for women. So where do we escape from? I'm talking of this as a woman. Where is my escape? I come to church. I have a list of standards I have to maintain to be godly, to be required as a godly woman. But my husband has no list whatsoever. No list whatsoever. If he wears this t-shirt, it's fine. He wears a short, it's fine. He wears a tracksuit, it's fine. He
but
wears
not to church, yeah.
he wears a suit. No one talks about his suit, the type or whatever. I wear whatever I wear. Oh, the dress was too floral. It's too loud. This orange is too bright. It's too loud. Oh, that hot pink is for an elder's wife. Oh, I like some of us were elders' wives. For an elder's wife, that's too much. And they're thinking, hey, excuse me, give me a break. I'm a human being before being an elder's wife, So there's no escape.
Not even an elder. Yeah. I think
there's no escape. If you go to the world, Emma, women also don't have an escape route. It's standard after standard. A woman should do this. A woman should do this. A woman should do this. Why can't I do what I want with my body and the way I want to dress, with no one judging me to say, oh, she's now falling under the pressure of society and standards. Look at the way she's now dressing. She's following the new trends of culture. Or she's too behind. There's always something about women and their dress. And I think it's really unfair. I don't know how that can change at a worldwide view, but I think it can start in our homes and it can start in our church, in our movement.
I feel to
just let someone be. You know,
Yeah.
we don't know why they're dressed that way. Why? Let them be comfortable in their own style, you know, because there's so much pressure. And what makes it worse is, whether we like it or not, subtly we always go back to Ellen White for standards. And yet when you look at Ellen White, she is bashing women all the time. Don't put beads on your, don't waste time putting beads on your, what if it's not wasting time and I have the time to be putting beads and embroidering?
Well, they're already on there when you buy it now. But anyway,
Yeah,
you don't
you
have to
see?
waste any time. Well, I think
So-
first of all, yeah, I mean, you've said it's unfair. You could look at it like that, because and the reason why the author's bringing this out is because patriarchy has made it that way, that women's dress is the focus of attention as opposed to men's. So in that sense, when you say it's unfair because of the Adventist background, Ellen White is addressing the needs of society when she's focused on the women, because that's where the issue is in society. The issue is with the women, but she's not, as we've kind of alluded, she's not completely focused on that. She's on the health, she's on the time. So there are principles behind the dress which we need to look at. So it's like, how are you using your time, which we would say was an important question. It's not just about what you're wearing. When she addresses, you know, spending hours sewing the sequins on, it's not just because it's making it look more adorned, it's because it's wasting time. So there's multi layers to it. But I hear you with the church, and I think your background of going to church and having that is, again, there may be some good principles there, but they've been implemented in a very judgmental, policing way as conservatives, which has been damaging, just like the health message. And I think Curtis raised this point last time about telling children you must eat your fruit and vegetables because Ellen White says, you know, or because we've got it there from Ellen White. And it's a very negative way of implementing something which was meant to be positive and a blessing. So these dress councils were meant to be a blessing to us. It's meant to protect us from the dangers of society or from the dangers of the world, whatever that looks like. So now we've moved on 200 years, we need to say, okay, contextually, what do we take from that? So I don't think it's the way we've read Ellen White. There are some good principles there, but now we've got to move on and grow with it, just like the Constitution. So we don't throw it all out, but we say now, really, is that valid? Is that applicable? So like you said about sequins or beads on your clothes, is it really a big deal? So now we have to, I guess, look at, I think this is what people have been doing, I suppose, with the reform vow. So we went through a liberal kind of thing where people left over wearing makeup and jewelry and other things when Elder Tess first started speaking. And now we're going back and looking and going, actually, what should a constitution or what should the vows look like for a movement of this kind? Which goes back to Natalie's question. How does this work now? Do we need someone to tell us, well, these are the guidelines, let's do this. Is that still valid? And if it is, what is it we're saying? Because as you say, the pressure always seems to end up back on the woman to change something, and it's her problem. And so I think we've taken our hands off the dress question in a big way, saying, you know, actually do what you want, wear what you want, within reason, within the dress question, because this is, as you say, it's been so restricting and so mentally draining that now just wear your trousers, just wear whatever you want to wear, in a sense. But then it sort of opens that question of, well, how modest is modest, and do we even need to think about modesty? So there's a lot of that going on, I guess, with the vows, and maybe that's why the vows haven't been changed yet, because this isn't that straightforward, and we're still moving and transitioning away from the time period of Ellen White, but what's the principle? So it's that principle precept thing with that question, and I think we have all been damaged by our conservative view of it. So the danger is we just say, oh, forget all that now. You know, we've just gone from right to extreme left overnight. So I think we're trying to find that, you know, what is the culture of a movement that's based on equality, that says everyone's equal under the law? What does that look like? And I think that's at the heart of this question. One of the questions behind this is, dress is just a symptom, and as she's saying, anorexia is a symptom of all this patriarchal pressure around women and food and body image, and this is, it may seem an extreme reaction, and it is an extreme reaction, but there's many layers leading up to that, or levels of it. So people eat, they don't eat, and it's connected to a lot deeper issues than just gluttony, for instance. Just they're fat because they eat too much. It's not that straightforward. So
Brian, sorry, go on.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, Brian, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe based a bit on what Natalie was saying about what are we doing in the movement. I just want to ask a question. Unfortunately, maybe a bit on the men's side as well. If you're going to camp meeting, what's your mindset like? Do you think okay, these are the clothes that one should wear for camp or on Sabbath. I'm going to wear my whatever it is. And the other days, I'm going to wear this. Do you dress for the occasion or you just dress as you? And if you dress as you, do you wear makeup during the week when you go to work or whatever it is you do during the week? And when you come to camp, you don't wear makeup. Not, as I said, not so much the men, but yeah, men also have the issue. You decide, okay, am I going to wear a suit on Sabbath? Me, as Brian, I suits
You
because
wear a
of my
suit
body
anyway.
shape. Because of my body shape, suits are a no for me. I'm totally uncomfortable in it. I may look good, and that's inverted commas, in a suit, but I'm uncomfortable and I can't wear that. So, yeah, as I was saying, with
So
what Natalie was saying, yeah,
I feel you're hitting two issues. One is, are we consistent? Are we dressing differently for the world
yeah,
and the movement? And the second one is, I guess, connected to Sabbath clothes, when you made a distinction between what you'd wear in the week and what you'd wear on Sabbath at the camp meeting or not at a camp meeting. So maybe that's a discussion we need to have around what's the principle when Ellen White, well, certainly one of the things I think she meant when she said everyone should have a Sabbath suit is because they worked in the fields, they worked as labourers during the week and they were dressed and they got very dirty and scruffy. And so she's,
yeah,
you should wear a suit, because you shouldn't just turn up in your labouring clothes on Sabbath, because there is an occasion and there's a time and place. So there is certainly clothes fitted for occasion. So if you're climbing up a ladder, in the old days, even we'd probably say you should wear trousers, and then we'd start questioning whether a woman should be climbing up a ladder. I mean, that's how far it would go. But it's that, but we know that there's clothes fit for purpose. So if you're going to the swimming bath, you're going to wear a swimsuit, but you're not going to wear a swimsuit on Sabbath. I think everyone would agree with that. So there's levels of there's certain boundaries we wouldn't cross, but within that, what's the principle now of wearing a Sabbath clothes? Do we still think we should have clothes set aside for Sabbath special ones? What's the purpose behind that? Does it mean we're not accepted in the week in our t-shirts? So that's one question. And then I guess the second one, like you said, is, do we do something different in the week than we do with movement members? Personally, I don't know whether people feel they need to, whether there's some hypocrisy. I don't know if hypocrisy is the right word, but why would you feel, or you're trying to fit in with the people you're with, perhaps if you're wearing the makeup in the week, if you use the example of makeup, and then you don't feel you have to do it on Sabbath because no one else does? I don't know. I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Emma.
Curtis,
and
you want
just
to
sorry,
respond?
just tied to that is what you eat as well.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I'd love my chicken when I come to camp, but everybody else not eating chicken. So, hey, yeah, I am eating beans and
Corn
gravy,
substitute.
suffering.
Sorry, missing my chicken. Yeah. Is that what you're asking, if people are doing that? I don't know if everyone's going to be willing to confess, but or not confess, but share. I guess it would be confess if we're going to start making some kind of judgment around that. So it's being free to be consistent, I think, with who you are, and being honest with that, with yourself first, and then questioning, why aren't we with each other? I think that's probably important to do, whatever you're doing. But Curtis, were you gonna?
I guess there's two things which um the first thing is what Blessing brought up about, does the institution, like, how does the institution handle it? So if I just compare two institutions, so in the Adventist church, at least growing up, I specifically remember, this person, a woman coming to church in high heels, makeup, um, and I can't remember other stuff, but there was high heels and makeup involved, and the pastor pulled her aside, and gave her a talking to, about how that's inappropriate and etc. And then, so that's how the institution is dealing with something. And if I look at how the movement, at least recently, has dealt with what people dress, Natalie's comment in the chat, she asked rhetorically, have you been to camps lately, with a laughing face? Because I think, like, for instance, my time in Slovakia, um, if people saw how people dressed and what they ate, it's just so different to how we've operated in the past, where people just wore what they wanted, to a degree, um, like men and women to a degree, in a way that I don't think people would have been comfortable doing in the past. And so I think that's a reflection of how the institution is dealing with it. So no one, I don't think, was pulled aside saying, you are walking around in shorts with hair on your legs, and etc. And the people that did can speak up, but um, I'm not. Yeah, I guess the question is how the institution deals with it. And I'm not convinced that at least the movement deals with clothing or food in the same way that they have in the past. That they given, it seems to me that it's given people the room to do what makes them comfortable. Um, and then the second thing was the dressing for an occasion. I think to any reasonable person, they might think that you wouldn't appear to court in a swimsuit, because the occasion requires certain things. But where people might have felt uncomfortable, at least under our conservative banner, coming to church for themselves, coming to church dressed in makeup, but go to work in makeup, is because the two different institutions treat you in a different way. So it's just going back to how does the institution deal with you and whether you have the comfort to be comfortable, in your choices in life.
And I think that's an interesting point about the institutions before and after as well, with how we Adventist Church or how the movement dealt with things before. I don't think there was ever any disciplinary action on dress or diet before, but there was a culture of this is frowned upon, you don't do that, because of this is the way we'd seen Ellen White. And there was a very big, I think, culture of judgment that, it's not acceptable to do that, to eat that, to wear that, because of the whole way we operated as a movement, even though it wasn't a disciplinary offence in
Yeah,
that sense.
so
But
I
I
don't
think
mean like people were
no, I know.
but
So I think that the culture of the movement's changed in the fact that people are much more accepting, and that we've changed our view of how to see those counsels. So we're saying, for instance, health message is not salvational, it's good advice, in which case it lifts the pressure off now to say, whew, we're not going to be punished by God or by each other if we do this, this, and this. Let's just relax and do this. So I think it definitely it's a much happier, more comfortable, perhaps is a better word, culture in the movement for people to be accepting and grow and be themselves. So I think that's the way we've done it from, I suppose we've cultivated an attitude or an atmosphere that's much more conducive.
Andres, you got your hand up?
Yeah. So in regards to that issue of the institutions, I think so I have two comments, I think. One is that I I'm pretty sure that as an institution we have, so I'm pretty sure this movement as an institution is a long-term solution in that um there's there's not much that we can do right now, really, in the sense that we don't have either the skills or the authority to help, basically to help society. Like we're not scientists, we don't have we're not psychologists, we don't have access to we're not an organization that, like does statistics analysis as to like what things are better for society, where things are not. Um and so I think it would be naive to expect that this movement is going to solve these problems really in this world. So I yeah, like that. So it's kind of tricky because we are going to, I believe, in the future, in heaven, um, and we do have a work to do here to be prepared for that. But if you look at it realistically right now, I don't think we have the ability to solve the problems. Like we can create, and we've created a culture, you know, within this movement that promotes, you know, better practices, I guess, and that's a lot. But a lot of the things that we use, it's external, it's things that are external to this movement as an institution. Like we read books that are by, you know, people that, you know, do studies in rules that we don't regulate or that we have no, you know, access to or control of. So um I think that's one thing on the one side. Like, and on the other side, what we've done, I believe, as I think you were saying, Elder Emma, is that the authority that we used to have, or that we sometimes do, is like, sure, you can do whatever you want. And I think like that's maybe the problem that could arise with the study of Hebrews if we don't understand it properly, is that okay, we have now the ability to do whatever, to decide what it's best for ourselves. But what we've used to do in the past with that is like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if you get it wrong, God's going to judge you. So in the end, the authority that we get and the advice that we get is like, if I tell you something, it's it's probably correct, and if you don't follow it and it was correct, then God's going to judge you, which means kill you. And so I think that's a danger,
Mm.
um, in the face of, you know, this the idea of having the law in our hearts, if not understood properly.
So is the danger that it's still, that's the reality, that this is the standard by God and you'll die if you don't do it? Or is the danger
Yeah,
that we're still seeing it that way and that's perhaps not correct? It's not
yeah, that
quite.
we're still seeing it that way.
Mm. Yeah, I think we're still moving, we're still growing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. I think this is why I did this, not so much to get through it as to have a discussion around how it affects us
Emma,
as individuals and the movement. Yes, Natalie.
I just got to say though, like me, dyed hair, Brian, chicken, whoever, what else do I say, makeup. If we like all these things, can we say, of the world, because we haven't got certain things in the movement allowed, are we going to be happy in heaven if we take of them now and we are addicted to them now, of that look, that taste, whatever it is? Are we going to be happy in heaven because it ain't going to be there?
But Emma,
What's the cost?
It is.
I think this goes to what Andres just said, is that, you know, we kind of caveat that you can be wise enough to make decisions but for yourself, but if you make the wrong one, you're not going to be in heaven. So you're kind of, it's like holding a gun to a person's head and saying, I'm not going to shoot you, but, you know, love me. And if you don't, then I might pull the trigger.
Yeah.
You have the choice though. So it's like we're not really giving people that choice to to have a choice, because it's kind of a forced choice. And that's what we say about women in abusive relationships, is that it's not really a choice that they have to leave or not. It's a false, I don't know what word Paminda uses. I'll just say a false choice, and etc. So I'm not sure, like for me at least, once I've stopped thinking about um like this and heaven, earth and heaven, and I've just started thinking it about okay, let me evaluate what options are available to me here and see what makes me happy, and etc etc. I can make those choices instead of pushing people down the hole of do this or don't do this because heaven's a different ball game and you need to pattern up because heaven won't have these things. Like, I believe that God has a plan to fix whatever happens in heaven because there'll be so many people who are in heaven who didn't like Jews, Martin Luther, who just ate flesh because that was normal, and they still going to have to be dealt with as well. Their tastes, their affections, and whatever. So this is not me saying, people just do what you want because heaven, it's all going to get sorted out. It's just perhaps tread lightly on the idea that of giving people a choice, but not really giving them a choice by holding a gun to their head.
I don't think that God is doing that, holding a gun to the head. I think there is a cause and effect and consequences of your choices, and I don't think they come from God. They're up to yourself.
Sure, but that's not what I was saying. But anyway.
So is that why you made the analogy, Natalie, that when you get there, you're going to have to think about this because you're not going to be doing it there? What's your point about that? Is that we should stop it here then? Or it's okay here? Because I was thinking circumstances change things. We are in an environment which is sinful, and it dictates a lot of our choices in many ways. And I don't say that we haven't got choice, but in many ways we haven't got choice in some things.
I think it will be painful because we do, like Elder Paminda says, we take everything with us, don't we? And I think Curtis just mentioned about being whatever against Jews or whatever. We take that character with us, whether it's come from dress reform, diet reform, bias, or whatever. So I just think it's going to be a painful place if we're taking something that is not of the heaven that will be. I don't know.
Well, certainly there'll be hundreds of people, millions of people taking things that are not of heaven. So it's going to be painful, or it's going to be difficult. So it's just how difficult it is for us individually, I guess, is what you're addressing. If you carry on doing something that's perhaps not the best practice or helpful, will you find it harder when you get there? Maybe you will. Maybe it's circumstances will make it easier that, there isn't the chicken, so you can't have it, for instance, or there's no hair dye, so you haven't got a choice. But I say that.
I get what you're saying, but can you just read out Blessing's point, because it is the point I brought up, and I think it'd be interesting to end.
And mine too, please.
And Charity's got a hand up. Sorry, I can't see the chat. Seems to not let me open it when I'm in.
I'll read it.
Yeah,
Charity said, the institution has the work to promote public health and provide the people what is healthy and good for them. Just like the government has information on what is healthy diet, etc. But the government will not force people to be vegan or to not smoke, but will regulate as much as possible businesses in order to have healthier options. I think the movement has the same job function, but individuals still need to make their choices. And if they make bad choices, they will. They are given room to choose. And then Blessing said, I don't think Hebrews is saying we are wise enough as individuals to do what is right. I said, yeah, I agree. Blessing said, I think it's talking about something else.
So, Charity, maybe we can ask Blessing in a minute what he thinks it's talking about. I don't know. Go on, Charity. She's got a hand up.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to comment on the same thing, that I think most of the times what probably throws us off is being able to juggle between the work that is required to be done by the institution and what individuals do or are supposed to be doing as well. Because I think as a movement, just like with governments, there is things that are expected of governments by the people, right, that they're supposed to do. Because if governments don't regulate on businesses or put bans on certain things, like, for example, drugs, right, it's people won't, they are going to do things that are not good for them or good for their health. And the government knows that some people do things without education, or they are born into it. They just eat what they've been given. They just smoke because that's what's around them, and they don't know what's best for them. So they're going to make sure that they put out that information and it's there. And if need be, there's certain things that are actually banned from people using them, even though you can still have people doing it underground, but you would protect a lot more people by doing that than just letting people use whatever else that they want to use, right? So I think as well the movement has the same job function where it's actually going to put in place laws, or I don't know if it's policies or whatever, to inform people and tell people what's good for them and what we stand for. And when someone is going to join the movement, they have to be aware of what they're getting into, right? But at the same time, there's things, of course, that the movement cannot intervene into people's lives over. And if people are going to make choices about what they're going to eat or what they're going to wear, they should have that opportunity in that room to make those choices, but with the information available. So if the movement is going to have, for example, a function, whether it's a camp or whatever, they are required to give to people what is good and what is healthy and what is right. But if individuals are going to bring what they want, what they prefer, that's their choice, and they can do that as well. So I think it's important to also be able to see the difference between the two.
Yeah, and there are boundaries. There's a culture that's supporting the actions so that it's not necessarily just do what you want. As we know, there's boundaries of some kind in society which say these are the guidelines, you know, and there are laws that if you break them, there's going to be consequences. So it's how much of that as a movement we are adopting, and what style of management. I suppose that goes back to what we're saying about the whole culture of the movement shifting. So now,
Yeah.
what laws and rules or constitution do we have in place? You know, at the moment we've got the vows. Obviously, these are the assent to these doctrines that makes us who we are. This defines us. This is, if you join us, you're assenting to agree with that. It's how we process that. Yeah.
And I was just thinking as well. I think I'm not sure exactly whether the point that Natalie made was contradicting with what Curtis was saying, or maybe it was just not understanding each other. But I think the other thing that's important as well is to ensure that the information is available for people to know that the choices that they are going to make have consequences. Like, for example, when someone buys cigarettes, there is information on the box, on the cigarette box, that states clearly that if you actually smoke this, this is what's going to happen to you, right? There's consequences, and you're going to end up having different lung problems, or it's addictive, and they have to mention that information, and it's available. And of course, that I'm thinking it's information that has to be available for people to know that every action that you have has consequences, and whether it's rewards or consequences. If you do something good for your body, if you eat healthy, it's going to also be manifest in your body. And if you're not going to eat healthy, then it's going to affect you in 1, 2, 3, 4 ways down the line, or there's immediate consequences, and then there's long-term consequences, right? And I think it's important to actually have that information available for people to know the consequences to their actions, as opposed to shying away from it altogether and being afraid that, okay, if we are going to tell people, people are going to think we are forcing them to do things the way we want or anything of that sort. I'm not talking about forcing it in people's faces, but I'm talking about having the information there, and it's mentioned, and people have to know the consequences to their actions. So it's not necessarily a fear mongering tactic, but it's a choose ye, which way is right, right? If you're going to walk this way, it'll take you in that direction. If you're going to walk in this way, it will take you in that direction. It's just clear, plain information so
Mhm.
that people know when they are making decisions what they're going to do. If it makes them feel uncomfortable, unfortunately, they're going to feel uncomfortable because they have to fight what they want and what the reality is. And that's part of the human experience.
Okay, Emma,
Yeah.
it's just to let you know that it's 11 minutes past 12 and Primrose has got a hand up.
Thank you. We need to, can we have a bit, maybe 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes left? We're not going to get through this. We might need a part 3. Primrose, Rose.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to bring up a point of mental capacity. Yeah, so in the world, mental capacity, the government and institutions, well, at least let's talk about the UK government, has made it clear that everyone has mental capacity until they are pronounced they don't have it by a qualified person. So even if you're taking care of a service user who you believe has mental challenges, but if they want to do something, the government will say that they have mental capacity to make a choice, unless that person begins to harm other people, and then they'll face the law. So even if that service user then thinks, oh, because I have a learning disability, I can go around smashing people's cars, they'll pay for those cars. Okay. So what I don't understand is when we come to church and religion, mental capacity, how we define it. It's like as church members, we don't have mental capacity, we don't believe we all have mental capacity, because even when we give advice to say, okay, eat what you want to eat, but know there are consequences. I think in this day and age, the world knows that there's cholesterol and where you get it from, the world knows the benefits of exercise. I don't really think it's because that person doesn't know the benefits and the disadvantages of doing something. So we treat people as if they don't have mental capacity, right? And that's shameful, because we take that from Ellen White. We take it from her, where people don't have mental capacity to do what is right and to know what is right. So I'll give an example. Coffee might be good for you, but it might not be good for me, What else? Cucumbers may be good for you, but might actually give me an upset stomach. Let us give people mental capacity, the chance to utilize their mind. Yes, we will have structures in place. This movement is about respecting other people, equality, no suppression. But if my eating red pepper is not causing you heartbreak, Emma, let me be. What's the problem? Give someone mental capacity. Red pepper might cause you acids, but maybe it's not causing me acids. So let me be. So today I'm coming from a radical point of view, because most people think I believe I'm always on the, cautious side. But I want to think differently, to say, look, what's really the issue? What's the problem with someone eating raw carrot or boiled carrot or steamed carrot? Give someone the mental capacity to choose. And I think in this day and age, we know what's good and what's not good for our own bodies. You can just go on internet and search, are cucumbers good? You get a list of why cucumbers are good, So it's not about people don't have information. It's about mental capacity. We always want to control each other and set standards for each other.
I think that's true to a degree, but I think most of us You mean in the movement or in Adventism? I think the only reason that comes about, one of the main reasons, is because we think that's what God wants. So we're trying to please people for God. We're trying to please for our own sake and for other people's sake, because we want to be in an environment where it makes it easy for me to follow God. So I think some of that isn't coming from a bad place, but it sounds very ugly the way you put it, which I agree, it has been implemented in an ugly way often. And I agree that the judgment on those things, and that's hopefully what we're trying to do by saying, you know, it's not salvational, because salvational means we judge it severely because it's life and death. That's the logic, and it's logical to do that, because we're saying if this thing's going to cause someone immediate death or eternal death, we're going to say don't do it, you know. But now we've moved into, it's good advice. It clearly doesn't cause physical death straight away. Even long term, the health message, it doesn't cause, you know, someone eats meat all their life or smokes all their life. We know some of these things don't cause immediate death. They might cause problems, but it's not, you know, there's varying aspects of it. But the point is that because we thought it was life and death, we said it's important to legislate this, which it is if you care about people on one level. So I think it's now moving from that and saying, okay, so what is life and death? Actually, what is salvational? And that's what we're wrestling with, this whole thing about how does salvation work? That's where Hebrews is coming from. How much of it is God and how much of it's us? How much is the human divine combination? It's complex. So what does that actually, how does that change things? And what are we allowed to do? What are we not allowed to do? Because we've had a mentality of children that says, tell me what to do. And we've been told in the intimate detail what to do, sorry. So you wear this, you eat this, you school this way, you don't do these jobs, you don't go here, you don't go there. And it's been so regimented. And now we're saying, actually, it's a bit like the liberation of the slaves, I can imagine. They were told how to think, and now they've got to go out and make a living, buy a house, function in a world by themselves, making decisions for themselves. And it feels like that with us. We've been happy slaves, and now we're coming out of that going, actually, you've got to be responsible, equality, behaving human beings. And how does that look? And how much is someone else telling me what to do now? And how much should they impact me? And I think we're wrestling with that, what that looks like. And so,
Emma?
Yes.
I'm going to reveal what was in the chat. Andreas asked me to reveal it.
Okay, just give a second. I know Nyasha's got a hand up and she hasn't spoken yet. I just want to see if she does at this point, and then we'll come back to that, and then we'll have to finish. Go on, Nyasha.
Okay, actually, it's Ignatius.
Ignatius, okay.
Oh yeah, we decided to use the same gadget. Okay. So yeah, I raised my hand when Rose was speaking because I strongly agree with what she was saying. If there's one thing that this movement's major weakness, if I am to put it that way, is to be controlling of others, and it can actually give you a strong headache. You live in constant anxiety and fear if you're a member of this movement. I remember someone in Africa who left. They have left interacting with people in this movement. Mentioned one day to me that, since the day I decided to stop all interactions with people in this movement, I feel some relief, some breeze of fresh air, because sometimes we are so overbearing on people's lives, such that you wonder if God is even like that. At one point in time, I said to Nyasha that, if God is like what our movement sometimes does, then that God is really tough. So yeah, I agree with what Yehu was saying, that if only we could give people mental capacity, if we could give people some room to think and execute what they are thinking, give them the right to be wrong, I think that would make people happier.
Do you feel we're doing that as a movement? Because I feel we are doing that as a movement.
A right to be wrong, yeah, in courts. Yeah.
The right to speak, a right to give their opinion, like the whole way the Sunday law studies are being conducted, I think is an attempt to redress that and to say, look, even as Adventists from what Rose was explaining about being judged for what people wore at church, that's the opposite. My experience in Adventism is quite liberal here, but still they're controlling about what you can do evangelically and what books you can give out and all these things. So they curtail rights in many ways. And I think we've had that in the movement. We've just a lot of that is a product of patriarchy. It's the fact that there's a leader over you that dictates how it should be.
Yeah, I think maybe if we are doing that here, there is need for an effort to spread that kind of influence to Africa as well.
Yeah.
I'm usually going to Zimbabwe in particular. I'll be going there soon again. People are so anxious. They'll be asking, so what are we supposed to do this? What are they saying these days? Are we supposed to do that? Oh, I saw so and so doing this. Is it correct? You see now. And when you try to tell them that, no, guys, you need to have capacity. We have been given information already. In Africa, I speak for my village. In my village where I come from, you could actually be labeled by the leadership as one who is rebelling against the structures, against the movement. You see now. So sometimes
I think it's a huge cultural issue there as well, which is the church, and the church is more conservative.
I think we might need a deliberate effort in undoing that kind of culture so that people are genuinely happy in the movement. Because most people, especially those that do not have an opportunity to speak, those that speak in the corridors, and if you get a chance to talk to them, they are so afraid of the leadership. Whoever is made a leader, even at local setting, people become afraid of those people because they think that we are supposed to comply to what that person is always saying. You see now. So it's like people, they are in a yoke, you see now. So I really agree with what you just said. Yeah. So
I think it's a problem more so.
that's what I just want.
I think there is a problem there because I feel that Africa's behind in the sense of culture. It's more patriarchal, it's more clans, it's more family orientated, how perhaps England used to be or UK used to be 100 years ago. There's much more of a stronghold of cultural pressure that says it's not just Adventist pressure, because the Adventist church seems to be more conservative there too, or was more controlling than it is here because we've got more Western liberal kind of influence. The patriarchy, it seems to have such a stronghold in Africa, that whole hierarchical, do what the leaders say, that's like, we don't think for ourselves, that they're moving away from that, but it's a slower process, I feel, than it is here. But we're struggling as well. So that's that whole moving away from being told what to do, and this is what God wants, to actually, we're not even sure who God is. We're not sure what God wants, and now we're not sure how to be saved, and that's all impacting this discussion.
Okay. And just one more point, Emma, that I just forgot, I was about to forget, is that the gist of our message is the golden rule, is it? Do for others as you want them to do what you want them to do for you. That is the gist. That is what God requires of us to be doing, the golden rule. Let's do away with sexism. Let's do away with oppression of another individual over another individual. And I think that when you don't give a person mental capacity, you are abusing that person. You are oppressing that person. You are not giving them the right to live, the right to liberty, the right to be who they are. Give them that right. And after giving them that right, you are able to show them in a respectful manner, right? Listen to what they have to say for themselves, because everyone thinks people might not be able to speak English, right? And might not be able to hear, to understand properly as the lessons are given in English. especially as I speak for people in my village. They are not, some of them are not as educated, you see now. So they might be staring at the screen even when somebody's giving translation, but they need to watch it 4 or 5 times again in order for them to understand. But it doesn't mean that person does not think. The fact that they left Adventism and they came to join this movement, it means they went through some memory, some mental processes of making a decision between two things, and they chose to join us, you see now. So we should envisage continuing to treat those people as people that can actually make decisions, think, and that way we empower them. They will have power and they will have, that liberty even to be able to share with others. Yeah.
Okay, Emma, it's getting on for 12 to nearly 12:30.
Yes. Okay. Can we just finish off with what's in the chat? I think Natalie wanted to say something. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
connected.
thanks. I just wanted to sort of on the back of what I
Ignatius.
forget on your name. Yeah,
Ignatius.
sorry, it's been so long. Sorry. I'm an advocate these days, and I fight every day for people like that to make, whether it's or someone thinks it's an unwise decision, let them make it. So I know as an advocate, I fight for people's rights every day. So I agree with you. The other thing I just wanted to say was, it is past, and I am paraphrasing, the health reform given by Ellen White. I remember hearing Elder Paminda in the past, so don't say it's not saying it's today, that it's not about keeping you happy and healthy. Diet reform was given to Ellen White so you could make it to be the 140 or 1,000, that you could work as a slave and work long hours for God to give the third angel's message. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that was, something I hadn't heard before. When you're looking at reformed, it's not about making you happy and making you live longer, in the sense, a happy, healthy life. It was about making it so you could give the third angel's message and work hard for God. Now, I'm not saying that's the case today and how
Probably
we
the
look at that.
implication is
That was, I
Go ahead.
paraphrased that from the past. So I'm wondering what people would think of that. If you think it's not about happy life and eating your chicken and your pork or your vegetables or your raw food, it's about staying healthy so you can give the third angel's message.
And Curtis says in the chat, I disagree with him, laugh out loud. Yeah.
Okay,
I think,
I just wanted everyone's opinion. That was the past, it's not present. It was an old presentation.
is that what you meant when you said the health message wasn't just to make you, but see, I would still say the root of that is to make you healthy, so you can work harder. Because obviously,
Yeah,
it
that's
doesn't.
what I mean. So you could live, so you could work harder for God, longer hours to give the third angel's message, not so you can be
Make yourself
happy
happy.
and put your feet up.
But I guess if you want to serve God and do that will make you happy to do the third angel's message. But yeah, I get the point. I think Curtis is disagreeing with that, and I think there was something in the chat about eating. Anyway, that's about eating pork and chicken, but we can talk about that another time. I think it's that we're creating a culture where people can choose for themselves and are free to make that choice. And I think that's what we're hitting with the mental capacity. It's like give people freedom to do that and not judge them and not cast them off because they're doing something we don't think is correct, or we're all at different levels of growth. Thank you very much for your contributions. I know we kind of strayed off topic a little bit there, but a lot of this, the reason I'm doing it is because it is addressing deep held beliefs about ourselves, about the world, about the movement, and it's trying to come into harmony about the way we see things, the way we discuss things, the way we approach these subjects. It's important. So thank you. I think, well, we haven't finished it, but that's okay. We'll go back to it and see some of the solutions to that. And a lot of it is what we've been doing, which is reflecting on the past to see where you've got your ideas from. Where have my ideas about food and body image come from, primarily in this context, but it could be anything for us. Where's our ideas about dress, our ideas about diet, the two major ones we've been tackling. But where are our views about God? What are they and where they come from, and how have we interpreted Ellen White? How have we seen those things? And we're trying to readdress all those things to have a more rounded understanding of who God is, really, and ourselves, which is a reflection of who God is. So thank you for your participation. And we'll close in prayer. Dear loving God, we thank you for the information that you have given us through the Bible, through Spirit prophecy. Help us to see the truth about your character shining through these pages. Help us to rightly interpret the information that we have in our current dispensation, that we might make the right choices about how this movement goes forward, about how we behave in our individual lives, how we treat people, how we give people liberty and respect for, and allow them to make their own decisions whether we think it's right or wrong. And we pray that you would enable us to grow in our love for you and for one another. Please continue to guide and bless us as we go through this Sabbath. In Jesus' name, amen.